Anyone who has served and felt that feeling of the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, that, you know, I don't know if everybody has the sense of that you're vulnerable or you're invulnerable. It seems like at some point I had both, where it was, you know, I don't care because I'll be the last one to know if something bad happens, or that something bad's going to happen, so I might as well, you know, go day to day and not care. But that's something that most people never have to deal with, and so you know that you probably share that with those combat soldiers who served in other wars, and you respect them for it, just having the experience. And they, you know, there's a mental toughness that I think you have to have, to be, you know, a soldier. And when I say that, I'm including, you know, the sailors, airmen, Marines, etc. But you know, that is something that you have to work really hard to get. And so, you know, I think we all share it. It's not something you can put your finger on. There was a feeling that, you know, we had enemies. They were clearly defined, and I felt like I had a responsibility to serve the nation. Ironically, when I graduated college, the Berlin Wall was falling down, and the Soviet Union, which had been our many-year enemy, was kind of dematerializing. But I still felt very much that service was something that all Americans should do in some form or another. And I felt like that type of service for me would be military service in the Army. When I was commissioned when I graduated from college, which was 1992, and we were at that point actually benefiting from what they referred to as the peace dividend. You know, the Cold War was over, the military was downsizing, the original Iraq War, Desert Storm, had just been over, and there really wasn't a need for a very large standing army, or at least it was perceived there wasn't. And so I had hoped at one point that I would be to get an active duty assignment and do that as a career, but that didn't happen that way. And so I eventually got, because I had been commissioned and the Army wanted me to do some service, I got into the National Guard about 8 years later, and I was attached to the headquarters of the Missouri National Guard and as a public affairs officer, where I actually served before my time in Iraq and after. You know, it was highly unexpected that I was going to be deployed, frankly, because as a member of the state headquarters staff, you know, they don't mobilize National Guard headquarters. There had been instances where they were pulling people from here or there that, you know, to do assignments. But it had been many years since I had done my training, and my specialty was not something that we really were sending a lot of people over to do public relations. So ultimately, I got a call from a friend at the headquarters who said, by the way, they're looking at you for deployment as a group that they're sending over. And I was like, okay, well, that's very interesting. I had just started a new job about 5 months earlier, and I went into my boss, who I had told at my interview that it was, you know, that frankly that the Huns would be coming over the next hill before I ever got deployed, only to say, by the way, I just got a very strange call, and they're running my packet to see if I'm going to deploy, at which point she said, didn't we talk about that? I thought that wasn't going to happen. And I said, no one was more surprised than me. We were sent to Colorado, spent about 3 weeks there, flown to Kuwait, which is, I won't be doing any promotional videos for Kuwait. It is probably the most miserable place on the planet. It is like the moon with oxygen. So it was about a week there, which was the most miserable week of my entire life, and then into Baghdad, and about another 2 weeks at a place north of Baghdad called Taji, and then we were out with our Iraqis. So it was a course of a month and a month plus, and we were on the ground training Iraqi special policemen, which are now called, I believe, federal police. I don't know if you really ever get completely acclimated, because it's weird, and I don't know that you'd ever want to get really comfortable with the idea of what you're doing. Um, you you view life as, okay, today is today, tomorrow will be tomorrow, and we'll take it at that rate. Because if you start thinking about when you're going home, then you're in the wrong place. It just takes that's way too long a day, a distance away from where you are. And I blogged about how incredibly odd the whole experience was. It just really was one of those things that you're unlike most. If you have a concept of what your military service is going to be like, this is not it. As a 35-year-old, when I started to serve, my whole worldview was different than when I was 22. And I think that became, if I was going to do that, if I was going to serve in a war zone, the best thing I could possibly do, especially in light of the fact that we were there, would be to make it better for the people who live there, so that when I leave and when we leave as a country, that place is better for us having been there. So it ended up being that as my personal values evolved, it also happened to some degree to fit with the service that I was called to do. I really love the Army. I wish to this day there was a way that I was still involved in it other than as a veteran. But there's a sense of community about it that even as someone who is no longer part of an organization per se, you have a commonality with people who've experienced it. And so that's, for me, it's a second family. I have a lot of friends who, have deployed or have served in other capacities, and the commonalities that only people who have done that, gone through the rigorous training, exposed themselves to the enemy fire, you automatically develop a sense of a shared experience. There are people that you truly bond with, the ones that you share mostly misery with. The best example is a major who was also in the Missouri National Guard, that when we deployed, the unit that I deployed with was 13 individuals from the Missouri Guard, 12 of which were officers, captain or above, and one very senior enlistedman. And when we got through our training in Iraq, and we were going to be put with regular Army soldiers, instead of using us as one unit, they broke us up into small groups and attached us to those other units. And it was in most cases, 2 to each active duty group. The families of the people who serve are every bit as much of veterans as the people who go there. They don't take the same risks, but they stay up at night thinking about it. They manage their households without somebody present. They take the kids to soccer and school and whatever with a hole in their life, and it's that is the parent or the families and extended families of soldiers and people who serve are just as vital to us being successful as a nation when we're at war as those who were actually on the front line.